Okay, greetings and welcome to another Grenfell MediaWatch update. Today's edition I want to call The Architects of Doom. And tomorrow's May, and it's widely been commented that this is going to be the first political test for councillors across Kensington following the Grenfell massacre. Now, people are already starting to talk about, and this is residents in North Kensington, that the South actually has already forgotten about it. Grenfell Towers has been covered up in a white sheet, and apparently the most pressing issues affecting residents in the South is parking, traffic, construction, and dog poo. Yeah, dog poo. I'm not even going to cover the fake nun story. Now, on a national level, the community secretary who was in charge of the Grenfell recovery operation has actually been promoted to Home Secretary. This is despite the fact that over half the households are still living in temporary and emergency accommodation. But anyway, this promotion has come really on the heels of the government's involvement in illegal deportation acts. They were illegally deporting British citizens simply because of the colour of their skin. Pure straight out racism. Anyway, Javid's replacement is James Brockenshire, and he's the politician who was actually criticised for actually encouraging landlords to adopt a policy where they only rented to tenants who had British sounding names. Anyway, let's move on and onto inquiry. First of all, we want to thank Robert Booth. He's a Guardian reporter who actually reported the fact that 72 people perished as a result of that massacre. And it's very refreshing to see a newspaper actually stick to journalistic facts rather than government spin. But where are we on the inquiry? One of the things we now know is that the inquiry is going to start with a commemorative hearing in May and probably end around 2020. Now, many of you probably thought the inquiry had actually already started. No, it hadn't. Those procedural hearings was just talking about what it's going to do when it starts. So we're looking at almost a year on from the massacre, and still nothing's really been done. Now, the government is still not going to add a panel to Morbig's team as requested by the families, but what they have done as a concession is they're going to open with a commemorative hearing. Now, this, what they're calling phase 1, will last until around November. Anyway, I have huge doubts about spending millions of pounds for Morbig and his team to come to the conclusion that perhaps building constructors shouldn't use flammable cladding. I don't think we need an inquiry to come to that conclusion, and we certainly don't need to put off the quest for justice to come to that conclusion. Anyway, one of the things you'll note on the inquiry website is that there is still no date for an interim report. So even though we'll probably get some grand statement by the end of November about what happened, there will be nothing about who's responsible and who's going to go to jail. Anyway, whilst I'm on the topic of fire safety, the British government is still quite insistent that its interim fire safety measures are adequate to protect the British public, and that it's not being really complacent over providing councils with the funding to remove cladding from the buildings, or unsafe cladding from the buildings of tenants across and up and down the country. We know this is a lie. And when I say the government, I'm talking about the Chancellor, Philip Hammond. Anyway, so whilst we've been told to wait till November for Morbig's words of wisdom on fire safetyness, the experts, and I'm talking about real architects, not these architects of doom that are running the country, are actually informing us that Hackett's report and her conclusions are wrong. They're telling us that what the country needs is not more guidelines, but firm regulations. And we can see that if we look at the documentary by the History Channel. Again, another powerful piece of journalism exposing the history of weak regulation. Wow. Wow. Can you believe it's spring? This is a serious, doing today's video is a serious challenge in this wind and rain. So I'm going to try and wrap this up as quickly as I can. Okay, so wow, Now, alongside the architects making these comments about not waiting for Morbik, we also have engineers saying exactly the same thing. We know that the fire safety tests that were conducted after the massacre are now unsafe. We know Kensington has an issue with fire door safety. We also know, or perhaps many of us don't actually know, that there were exposed gas pipes in Grenfell which were not covered with fire retardant boxing, which perhaps, and I think this needs to be investigated, led to many people being unable to escape when the massacre took place. So there's a lot to do, and we can't wait till November. Anyway, let's look at what we can do in support. Last week we were reminded that some 20+ people made suicide attempts. We also know that firefighters experienced trauma of what happened on that day.
You know deep down professionally, you know deep down you did everything and more. But it doesn't make you feel any better.
There is a feeling of being extremely proud of what we did and how hard everyone worked. But there's also that horrific feeling of we didn't get everybody. And we tried really hard.
We also know there's some sick individuals who are actually trolling articles talking about these issues, claiming that it's all about compensation. We need to kind of like deal with those people at some stage. But we also know that some of the local firefighters raised, I think it was something like £42,000 for charities helping the young people affected by Grenfell, and they deserve to be bigged up. But for those of you that want to get involved in direct action, on the 14th of May there will be two things you can do. At 3 p.m, wow, I'm back again, and it's a real struggle trying to do this video. But for those of you who want to be involved in some direct action to support the community, on the 14th of May there's going to be a protest outside Parliament at 3 p.m. when a debate about the panel is taking place. And at 7 p.m, the usual monthly silent walk will be taking place in Kensington. I know it can be tough. I know with all the other things going on in this world, you must be thinking, isn't it time to move on? But this issue hasn't been resolved. Please, even if you can't make one, make the other. If you can't make it, then promote it. This fight is a long fight, and I'm running out of breath, and I'm drenched, and I'm cold. I'm going to close it here. Many ancestors continue to guide and protect us. Ashe.